A cute baby giggles happily, celebrating 100 days since she was reborn with her past memories. Her gentle nanny walks into the room carrying a stack of fresh clothes. She happily scoops the little miss into her arms with a warm smile. In her past life, our girl was just a lonely high school orphan. But now she thinks she totally hit the jackpot and was born with a silver spoon. Suddenly, the nanny drops to her knees and bows to a man, calling him the Demon King. The baby looks up to see a towering man with fiery red hair and a dark, imposing aura. He coldly orders a young boy standing next to him to say hello to the child. Our baby's eyes light up at the sight of these absolute lookers. She stares at the red-haired man, mesmerized by his striking features. She gives him a solid 10 out of 10, claiming he's the most handsome guy she's ever seen. And the kid next to him isn't too shabby either, definitely going to grow up to be gorgeous. The boy bluntly introduces himself as Aquarion, not even bothering to look at her. The baby thinks he's super rude, but then his name suddenly rings a massive bell, causing her to freeze completely. The handsome man strokes his chin and officially declares the baby's name. She stares in absolute shock as the pieces start falling into place. The nanny joyfully repeats the names: sect leader Chinma, Aquarion, and the baby Chinlihua. The baby drops her jaw, completely horrified by the sudden realization. She unleashes a deafening, piercing shriek that echoes all the way across the courtyard. She realizes she's trapped inside a typical wuxia novel where martial artists fight to destroy a demonic sect. And her hot dad, he's Chinma, the ultimate ruthless final boss of the whole story. This guy literally murdered Waryun's parents and kidnapped him just because the kid had potential. Fast forward, Waryun grows up, escapes, becomes a grandmaster, and leads the good guys straight to the demonic sect's door. He absolutely wrecks Chinma and wipes out his entire family for revenge. Which means our cute little baby is destined to be slaughtered by the main character. She is Chinlihua, the evilest villain's daughter, doomed right from the start. Pure panic sets in, and she starts wailing and flapping around like a fish out of water. Waryun covers his ears, totally annoyed, while she glares at the boy who's destined to end her life. Chinma just stares down at the crying baby with a dark, unbothered expression. He coldly asks the nanny why the kid won't stop screaming. The nanny shrinks back, terrified by the Demon King's menacing glare. Trembling like a leaf, she nervously stutters that she has no idea. A wicked, chilling smile creeps across Chinma's face. He leans in and whispers, asking how a nanny could possibly fail at her only job. The poor woman collapses to the floor, begging for forgiveness and crying that she doesn't deserve to live. To her horror, Chinma completely agrees and casually pulls out his sword. Waryun calmly steps in, offering to take the nanny outside so the baby doesn't see the bloodbath. Chinma agrees, but the baby starts screaming even louder at her psycho dad. She realizes her innocent nanny is about to get executed over absolutely nothing. Sweating bullets, the nanny bows and begs for one last chance to calm the little miss down. Chinma stands tall and points out she was literally just failing at that a second ago. But with a terrifying side-eye, he actually decides to give her a shot. The nanny thanks him profusely, tears of relief streaming down her face. She picks the baby up and rocks her gently, begging her to stop crying. The baby quickly stifles her tears, knowing the nanny's life is hanging by a thread. But Chinma is ruthless. He orders the nanny to step outside to meet her demise anyway. The baby is totally shell-shocked that he's still going to clip her even though the crying stopped. The nanny accepts her fate, forcing a smile and telling the baby to be happy. But the baby isn't having it, reaching out and completely clamping down on the nanny's finger. The terrified nanny tries to pull away, but the baby refuses to let her go face the firing squad. Tears well up in the baby's eyes as she realizes her innocent nanny will literally die if she walks out that door. Chinma notices her desperate little grip and concludes the kid just doesn't want to part with her servant. He dramatically turns his back, ordering the terrified nanny to figure out why the baby cried so it never happens again. Little Lihua breathes a massive sigh of relief. She totally dodged a bullet. But she's still stuck between a rock and a hard place, her villainous dad and the boy destined to end her. Her tiny heart starts pounding out of her chest. She seriously questions if she can even survive this nightmare. In the original novel, the adult Chinlihua was a ruthless villainess who treated human life like absolute garbage. She literally looked down on everyone around her, leaving a trail of bodies in her wake without a second thought. So when the hero Waryun finally tracked her down, it wasn't just to avenge his slaughtered family. He absolutely obliterated her out of pure rage for her own twisted crimes. The baby clenches her tiny fists, resolving that she refuses to get packed up like that in this life. Later on, Chinma checks in, noting the baby is finally quiet, until she immediately starts wailing right on cue. She glares at him, completely annoyed by his overwhelming, scary presence. Unbothered, the terrifying demon king kneels right down to her eye level. Without hesitating, she rapid-fires spit bubbles straight at his face. The sect leader is completely caught off guard, dripping with baby spit while the nanny has a total panic attack. The nanny scrambles to offer a handkerchief, but Chinma just waves her off. Instead, he uses his advanced cultivation aura to instantly evaporate the spit, an absolute flex that leaves Lihua utterly speechless. Sometime later, the servants are busy hyping up how adorable the young miss is, and she happily agrees. But suddenly her dad is right there, staring a hole through her like she's a literal lab rat. He uses high-level martial arts footwork just to swoop in and grab her. She pouts, frustrated that her cold dad isn't slowly softening up like they do in typical novels. Realizing the wholesome family plot is totally chalked, she decides to pivot. Her new master plan: escape the villain lair, lay low in the countryside, and pray Waryun doesn't track her down. But to survive out there, she needs to learn martial arts, and she definitely needs a new teacher. Suddenly, a stunning white-haired woman glides into the room, and Lihua realizes she might actually have a mom. But the woman flashes a super creepy smile, claiming she's been dying to see her daughter. She strokes the baby, who is totally thrown off since the mom never even existed in the original story. The woman happily scoops her up, thanking the sect leader for the blessing of motherhood. Chinma just stands there looking completely bored while she lays it on thick. The lady squeezes her tight, but her overwhelming perfume makes Lihua want to gag. The baby starts thrashing and screaming, figuring this psycho just wanted to see her suffer. The woman fakes an apology to Chinma, claiming she stayed away so she wouldn't make the baby sick, which Lihua knows is pure cap. She then tries to play house, offering to have tea since the family is all together. But Chinma shuts her down immediately and walks out without a second glance. The second the door shuts, the woman's sweet smile vanishes as she complains the baby is too heavy. She literally chucks the baby through the air like a rag doll. Thankfully, the nanny dives to catch her. Ignoring them, the woman presses the nanny, demanding to know if the sect leader really visits every single day. Hearing the truth, a wicked grin spreads across her face. She snatches a gift off the table, muttering that she thought the kid was completely useless. Lihua instantly realizes this two-faced woman is just using her as a prop to get closer to her terrifying dad. The woman greedily inspects the rare cultivation pills gifted to the baby, eyeing them for herself. When the nanny weakly protests, the woman snaps, arguing a useless brat doesn't need them, but suddenly Lihua cries out in actual pain. The baby wails helplessly as the nanny rushes to comfort her. Pulling back her clothes, the nanny is horrified to find a massive, dark purple bruise on the baby's leg. She confronts the madam about pinching the child, but the woman casually brushes it off, claiming the baby was misbehaving. The nanny goes full mama bear, screaming that she won't let anyone abuse the sect leader's daughter. But the evil woman just smirks, challenging the servant to see who the world will actually believe. She flexes her insane background, daring the nanny to slander Bing Yunseol, the untouchable daughter of the Northern Sea Ice Palace. Lihua realizes her mother is from the Ice Palace, the only martial arts sect that actually tolerates the demon sect. She suddenly understands this wasn't a family built on love but a strict political marriage. She stares at the woman, completely shocked that she's the daughter of such a powerful group. Yunseol smirks, admitting she only got pregnant to secure her standing with the demon sect. She glares at the baby, revealing she only enjoyed her pregnancy because it made Chinma visit her. A dark look crosses her face as she wonders if her husband would finally return if the baby just conveniently disappeared. Sensing the killing intent, the terrified nanny shields Lihua and begs for her life. Yunseol leans in with a creepy smile, glad the servant finally understands her place. Flipping the switch, she acts completely innocent, ordering the nanny to bring the pills to her room and treat the baby's bruise. She strides out like a queen, casually warning them that she won't let it slide next time. The nanny bursts into tears, holding Lihua tightly and apologizing for failing to protect her. Shivering in her arms, Lihua internally vows to completely crush this two-faced psycho under her tiny feet. But right now, she's so overwhelmed by her mother's freezing aura that her baby brain can barely function. Time passes and the nanny continues to beg the wicked madam for basic mercy. Yoonseol just brushes her off, claiming the kid needs to get used to the cold since she has Ice Palace blood. In reality, she's been stealing all of Lihwa's rare cultivation pills to buff her own power and beauty. She assumed that glowing up would magically fix her marriage with the sect leader. But her master plan completely backfired. He doesn't even bother visiting the child anymore. Furious, Yoonseol curses the day she ever gave birth, blaming the innocent baby for her ruined life. Meanwhile, little Lihwa is practically turning into a popsicle from the residual ice energy in the room. The nanny panics, but Yoonseol just mocks them, telling her to take the kid outside for some sunlight. Desperate, the nanny begs the madam to just use a fraction of her internal energy to warm the baby up. Yoonseol hits her with a lethal glare, coldly refusing to waste her precious power and kicking them out. With no other choice, the loyal nanny bites her lip and carries her freezing lady away. Fast forward to Lihwa at 3 years old, and the palace servants are openly talking trash, calling her an idiot because she still hasn't said a single word. Sitting quietly in the garden, Lihwa feels terrible for causing so much trouble. Dropping the baby act, she looks at her nanny and sadly apologizes for being a burden. The nanny shakes her head, insisting she's the one who should be sorry for not protecting her better. She tries to cheer Lihwa up, offering to make her a pretty flower crown. But Lihwa notices the nanny's hands. They're completely bruised and blue from tanking the mother's frostbite over the years. The nanny quickly hides her hands, forcing a bright smile and promising the pain will fade. She sits down in the grass, completely unfazed by her injuries. Suddenly it registers. She scoops Lihwa up, overflowing with joy that her young miss can finally speak and walk. But Lihwa frantically shushes her, demanding that this stays an absolute top-secret mission. She knows if her psycho mom finds out she's actually a genius, the bullying will go from bad to worse. The nanny nods in agreement, happily promising to keep her mouth shut while she makes the flower crown. Truth is, Lihwa has the mind of a full-grown adult and could have spoken ages ago. But playing the role of a delayed, quiet toddler is the ultimate survival strat in this villain's lair. The only reason her pronunciation is a little messy is because she hasn't used her vocal cords in literal years. She clenches her tiny fists, determined to tame Waryeon, the boy destined to kill her and escape her mother's grasp. Suddenly, a chill runs down her spine and she feels someone creeping in the shadows. She tilts her head, wondering if she's just being paranoid after all the stress. Brushing it off, she waddles over to a patch of flowers to pick a bouquet for her loyal nanny. But as she turns around, a shadow completely blocks the sun. She looks up and freezes, it's Waryeon looking down at her with absolutely zero emotion. Putting on her best baby charm, she flashes him a bright, innocent smile. After dealing with her nightmare mom, even the guy destined to assassinate her doesn't seem that scary anymore. Waryeon stares at her extended hand, coldly asking what she's trying to give him. She giggles and holds up the yellow blossom, happily babbling the word flower. But Waryeon drops to one knee and narrows his eyes, instantly realizing she understands perfectly, leaving Lihwa absolutely sweating bullets. Waryeon stares her down, bluntly stating he heard she was just a crawling fool who couldn't talk. Caught in 4K, Lihwa immediately panics and starts acting like a drooling baby to save her cover. She points at a random butterfly, giggling and putting on her best toddler act. But Waryeon isn't buying it for a second, totally unfazed by her little performance. He dryly points out that she's standing perfectly fine on her own 2 feet. He smirks, confirming his suspicion that she was faking being an idiot this whole time. Lihwa breaks out in a cold sweat, realizing her genius cover is totally blown. In a desperate last-ditch effort, she intentionally trips and falls right toward his boots. Her tiny heart beats out of her chest as she prays he writes it off as a lucky coincidence. But before she hits the ground, Waryeon quickly snatches her by the wrist. He coldly mentions hearing about her mother's frequent visits and how the woman's ice arts are getting suspiciously stronger. Lihwa's eyes widen in sheer panic, wondering if this kid actually figured out she's being used as a human battery. Surprisingly, Waryeon's sharp gaze softens and he actually apologizes to the baby. Without warning, he pulls her into a gentle hug, wrapping her in a warm, comforting aura. Lihwa melts into the warmth but internally begs him not to snitch to her terrifying parents, hoping he'll just hate her like in the original story. He looks down at her with pity, calling her a poor little miss. And then he literally welcomes her to hell, acknowledging the brutal reality of their lives. That dark comment completely ruins the vibe, and Lihwa angrily shoves him away, cursing him out in baby babble. She seethes, annoyed that this dude is trying to trauma dump on a literal toddler. Deciding he needs to be taught a lesson, she winds up for her ultimate secret attack. She launches herself forward and completely headbutts him right in the chest. But hitting Waryun is like ramming into a brick wall, and she just bounces off his solid muscles. She falls flat on her back, completely defeated by the future Grandmaster. Staring up at the sky, she accepts that she's absolutely cooked. She remembers that in the original novel, the adult Lihua was dangerously obsessed with Waryun. But he ruthlessly rejected her every single time since she was the enemy. The original Lihua just couldn't take no for an answer. She tried absolutely everything to trap him, which ultimately led to Waryun slicing her down without a second thought. Currently, Lihua cringes at her past life lore, vowing to never be that desperate for a guy who literally ends her. She panics, realizing any interaction with him is basically a fast pass to the grave. Meanwhile, some passing servants gossip about the madam throwing glass bottles at the young miss, calling the baby helpless. Lihua overhears their pity party and just lets out an exhausted sigh. Suddenly, Waryun approaches her again, surprised she's hanging out in the garden. Still salty from earlier, she waves him off and complains that he's blocking her precious sunlight. He looks down with a complicated expression, almost asking about her abusive mother before stopping himself. Instead, he drops to one knee and offers his wrist, wanting to transfer some of his body heat to warm her up. Lihua awkwardly rejects it, realizing she's already built up a tolerance to the freezing cold. Waryun stares at her tiny, ice-cold hands, clearly piecing together the abuse she's suffering. Lihua secretly enjoys the cozy warmth he radiates, actually glad he's turning a blind eye so she doesn't get in more trouble. She gives him a big smile, cutely telling him not to be sorry for her in broken toddler speak. But internally, she smacks his hand away, reminding herself that he's the enemy. She refuses to feel sorry for the future protagonist, knowing it's a guaranteed death trap. Just as she stands her ground, a stray toy ball bounces right past her. The distraction saves the moment as her loyal nanny runs over, proudly holding a beautiful flower wreath. Lihua instantly forgets the drama and excitedly begs her nanny to put it on her head. The nanny crowns her, gushing that her young miss is officially the absolute prettiest girl in the world. Lihua acts super smug, totally eating up the compliments and agreeing that it's obvious. Suddenly, she snaps her head to the side, catching a strange noise from the bushes. The garden goes completely silent, and she wonders if she's just hearing things. Oblivious, the nanny happily scoops her up, deciding it's time to head back inside before the terrifying madam wakes up. Once Lihua leaves, the terrifying elders of the demonic sect literally melt, gushing over how adorable she is. One even jokes he almost had a heart attack. Another elder violently shushes him, yelling that his loud voice might scare their precious little miss. One elder strokes his chin, noting she actually has massive martial arts potential since she completely failed to notice their hidden, expert presence. But the main topic of gossip is her outfit. They're all super confused as to why she's bundled up in thick winter clothes in the dead of summer. An elder aggressively nudges the young leader, demanding to know if the baby's health is failing. The leader sighs, explaining that if the righteous martial arts sects catch them hyperfixating on the baby, she'll instantly become a massive target. After all, these guys are the top 10 most wanted demons in the world, with massive bounties on their heads. They might be ruthless killers, but they agree the first child born into the sect in 200 years is just way too precious, deciding to secretly spam her with more gifts. Since they can't protect her openly, they rely entirely on the young leader, whose identity is still a secret, to keep an eye on her. The elders surround him with a terrifying, bloody aura, demanding to know exactly what's wrong with her body. The young leader sweats, admitting he felt a strange, freezing internal energy inside her that definitely shouldn't be there. Meanwhile, Waryun watches Lihua smile with her flower crown and questions if he should have cleared that frost energy from her system. He quickly brushes the thought away, telling himself it's not his problem if the enemy's daughter gets abused. But suddenly, he remembers a time when the tiny toddler bravely clung to Chinma's dark robes. She had looked up at the terrifying Demon King with a bright, innocent smile that could melt a glacier. He remembers her sweet, broken baby talk telling him not to be sorry for her. Back with the elders, they grab the young leader by the collar, screaming for an update. He nervously stammers that her heartbeat is completely fine, but his hesitation makes the elders assume the absolute worst. They brush it off as her naturally having a lower body temperature and plot to send her some high-grade ginseng to pump up her yang energy. But right in the middle of the chaos, Chinma calmly stands up and announces he's going into closed-door cultivation. The elders are shocked, asking when he plans to lock himself completely away from the outside world. He coldly glances back and states he's starting tomorrow. He clenches his fist, secretly deciding this so he won't have to look at that adorable kid for another second. He figures if he just avoids seeing her, his confusing, soft feelings will eventually disappear. He knows that if he keeps seeing her bright smile, his cold, demonic heart will absolutely get compromised. He seals himself inside the dark cultivation chamber, determined to train and forget about her completely. Fast forward 2 years later, Chinma is finally out and back at his desk when the nanny bursts in. She stands before him, completely frantic, and declares that the young miss is in terrible danger. Chinma instantly jolts up from his desk, knocking over his paperwork. He completely loses his cool, screaming at her for dropping this massive bomb right after his 2-year isolation. The nanny urgently explains that the true danger isn't coming from outside assassins, but from inside the palace itself. Chinma's aura literally bursts into flames as pure, unfiltered rage overtakes him. Without another word, he storms past her, slamming the door open as he heads straight for his daughter. Meanwhile, Waryon sits alone, gripping his hair in frustration because he can't stop caring about the enemy's kid. He tries to convince himself it's none of his business if she lives or dies, but the guilt is clearly eating him alive. Cut to Yoonseol's room, where the wicked mother is throwing a massive tantrum, screaming that her internal energy is rapidly draining. She blames Lihwa, but the nanny cries back that Yoonseol carelessly ate the kid's incompatible cultivation pills without even checking. Yoonseol's eyes flash with pure malice, and she orders the nanny to hand the brat over immediately. The nanny completely shields Lihwa with her own body, begging the madam to spare her own daughter. Yoonseol screams that she's not going to kill her, but if the nanny doesn't hand her over, they'll both get punished. The palace director tries to intervene, but Yoonseol just glares at him with a completely unhinged smirk. She lunges forward, violently grabbing the screaming baby right out of the terrified nanny's arms. In the struggle, Yoonseol brutally rips Lihwa's coat and squeezes her tiny shoulder like a vice. The nanny screams in horror, but Lihwa internally thinks this is actually a good thing, hoping the physical hit will calm her mom down. Yoonseol smirks, fully intending to use the baby as a literal punching bag to vent her anger. But Lihwa's vision suddenly blurs. She feels incredibly dizzy and then blood starts dripping from her nose. Before she can even process it, Lihwa violently coughs up a mouthful of blood right onto the nanny's robes. The nanny completely panics, dropping to the floor and begging the madam to call a doctor right away. But Yoonseol coldly refuses, knowing a doctor would immediately report her abuse straight to the sect leader. To cover her own tracks, she heartlessly tells the nanny to just let the bleeding baby sleep it off. Yoonseol frantically calls for her servant, ordering him to clean up the bloody mess before anyone notices. When he doesn't answer immediately, she whips around, completely annoyed. But her eyes widen in absolute horror. Her loyal servant is slumped against the table, completely covered in his own blood. Furious, she screams, demanding to know who dared attack her subordinate. The answer comes instantly as the door explodes open, revealing Chinma radiating a terrifying, blood-red aura. His demonic killing intent fills the room, terrifying the nanny who is desperately clutching the bleeding baby. Little Lihwa looks up with tearful eyes and weakly stutters out "Dada." The terrifying Demon King immediately drops to his knees, gently touching her arm and softly admitting he's late. His expression softens as he asks if she's in a lot of pain. Trying to be brave, she forces a tiny head shake and babbles that she's perfectly fine. Chinma stands up and carefully takes his daughter from the trembling nanny. He gently wipes the blood from her chin, reassuring her that she's safe now. The warmth of her dad's embrace finally breaks her tough facade. She completely bursts into tears, sobbing and calling out for her daddy. Chinma's gaze snaps back to Yoonseol, his eyes practically glowing with pure rage as he declares there's a beast in his house. The wicked mother drops to her knees, frantically claiming it's all a massive misunderstanding. He smirks darkly, asking what else she could be when she was literally trying to eat his child alive. Yoonseol is appalled, crying out how he could call his own wife a monster. Chinma coldly corrects himself, noting that even beasts protect their own offspring. He takes a menacing step forward, chillingly asking what that makes her. Realizing she's cornered, Yoonseol desperately begs for her life. But then a crazy, desperate look flashes across her face as she completely pivots her story. She wildly points at the nanny, totally throwing the servant under the bus by claiming she was the one abusing the baby. The nanny panics and begs for mercy, but Chinma calmly tells her to forget it. He looks down at his daughter, stating he'll decide who to believe. Realizing her lies aren't working, Yoonseol gets defensive, mocking him for suddenly wanting to play daddy. She yells that he needs to act like a husband first, claiming the child is useless to the sect anyway. She stands tall, aggressively pulling rank as the official lady of the demon sect. She assumes he'll back down because of politics, but Chinma bluntly shuts her down, stripping her of the title right then and there. Yoonseol is completely shell-shocked by the sudden rejection. She screams that a political marriage can't just be tossed aside, threatening that the Northern Ice Palace will never accept a divorce. Chinma just smirks, chillingly asking why he would ever need their permission. He calmly calls out for his shadow guard Yoonryong's. The elite assassin instantly materializes out of thin air. Chinma orders her to officially declare the divorce and to send the Ice Palace his ex-wife's severed wrist. The assassin nods without a single second of hesitation. Sheeing, a blade violently swings through the air in a total blur of motion. Yoonseol stands completely frozen, the terrifying reality of his ruthless order finally setting in. Lihua is so shocked by her dad's absolute savagery that she literally forgets to breathe. Chinma gently pats her back, softly reminding her to take a breath. He turns away, mercilessly ordering the room sealed with absolutely no food or medical treatment for his ex-wife. Desperate and bleeding, Yoonseol crawls toward the door, crying for the baby's forgiveness. She begs Lihua, claiming she was just crazy for a second and asking her to make it stop. But Lihua completely ignores her abuser, turning her head instead. She looks at her loyal nanny and sweetly asks her to come with them, thanking her for everything. Yoonseol goes absolutely feral, screaming that her mother will slaughter them all, but Chinma casually covers his daughter's ears to block out the trash talk. Carrying her out into the peaceful sunset, he softly tells his daughter to take a breath and relax. Feeling totally safe for the first time, Lihua gives him a massive smile and happily calls him daddy. Meanwhile, across the compound, a group of elders burst into the medical wing in total disbelief. They stare down at the examination bed, absolutely horrified to discover that their precious young miss is completely covered head to toe in dark bruises. The elders are absolutely furious, screaming about who could be sick enough to beat a small child like this. The young leader steps forward, suspiciously side-eyeing Chinma and noting he previously said she was totally fine. Chinma ignores the accusation and simply orders them to bring Waryeon to the room immediately. Without skipping a beat, he also casually orders them to completely dismember his ex-wife Yoonseol. Just then, Waryeon steps out from the shadows, smoothly confirming he's already present. Chinma looks at him sharply, confronting the boy about knowing his daughter was being abused this whole time. He pieces it together, realizing that's exactly why Waryeon interrupted his strict closed-door cultivation. Little Lihua squirms in the bed, gasping for air as her condition rapidly worsens. Chinma completely ignores the drama and focuses on Waryeon, stating he knows the boy possesses a rare, pure internal energy. Waryeon's heart sinks, realizing Chinma knew his massive secret, that his pure energy is literally toxic to demonic practitioners. Chinma stands tall and declares that Waryeon's pure energy is the only thing that can counteract the freezing frost inside Lihua. With a menacing glare, the Demon King strikes a deal. If Waryeon saves her, he'll overlook the kid's massive secret entirely. Waryeon internally weighs his options, annoyed his trump card is exposed but deciding he has to act fast. He tells Chinma they need to blast open her blood vessels, formally requesting permission to use the legendary Heavenly Purity Dew. Waryeon explains that the mythical elixir will clear her frozen arteries, secretly hoping this might actually unlock her martial arts potential for his own future revenge. Chinma smirks, fully aware of the risk but confidently grants permission. Waryeon bows respectfully, hiding his true intentions. Internally, he tells himself that once he saves her, they are completely even. Later, Lihua weakly reaches out, shivering and crying out that it hurts so much. Chinma stays by her side through the night, gently stroking her head to offer whatever warmth he can. As he tries to quietly leave, Lihua weakly grabs his sleeve, begging him not to go. He looks down with a complicated expression, softly telling her to just go to sleep. Tears stream down her face as she stammers, desperate for him to stay. Chinma reassures her, promising that the pain will completely vanish once she wakes up. But the terrified toddler clutches his robe tighter, sobbing that she's scared and begging him to hold her hand until she falls asleep. He stares at her for a long moment, then coldly replies, "No." She looks completely heartbroken, but Chinma quickly turns his back, clarifying that he doesn't hate her. He looks down at his own blood-stained hands, overwhelmed by his dark past, and admits he's just way too dirty to touch her. He tells her she's better off not thinking of a monster like him as her father, basically saying she can just use him until she's safe. He sits down beside the bed, settling in to watch over her without physical contact. Lihua smiles weakly, perfectly happy just knowing he's there, and finally drifts off to sleep. Chinma stays right there by her bedside, quietly guarding her through the long, dark night. The next morning, Lihua suddenly springs out of bed, totally energized and hyped that she's fully healed. She looks around and completely glitches out when she realizes she can literally see individual dust particles floating in the air. She rubs her eyes, totally bewildered by her sudden superhuman eyesight. Just then, the nanny bursts into the room carrying breakfast, completely shocked to see the kid awake. The nanny drops everything and rushes over, frantically asking if the young miss should even be sitting up. She bursts into tears of relief, admitting she thought she had lost her precious lady forever. Lihua tries to comfort her, totally surprised by the nanny's emotional outburst. The loyal servant grips her hands, promising to protect her with her own life from now on. Lihua smiles sweetly, naturally easing into her actual, clear pronunciation without even realizing it. The nanny immediately stops crying, completely stunned by how perfectly Lihua just spoke. Lihua mentally panics, realizing her fake baby talk cover might be blown because her mouth works perfectly now. The nanny completely misreads the situation, jumping to the conclusion that her young miss is an absolute genius who literally learned how to speak overnight. Changing the subject, the nanny quickly serves up some rice porridge, noting it's her first meal in a whole month. Lihua opens her mouth to eat, internally mind-blown that she was unconscious for 30 whole days. Mid-chew, she casually asks what happened to her abusive mother. The nanny suddenly gets super awkward, dodging the question by telling her to eat up so she can take a bath. The door shuts and Lihua drops the innocent act, coldly realizing her mother is completely dead. She stares blankly at her food, admitting she prayed for the wicked woman's death, but now that it actually happened, she just feels empty. Lihua quietly takes a bite of her food, her mind racing as she thinks about Chinma's actions. Later, she stands before a massive, steaming bath, nervously wondering if she has to go in all by herself. She completely panics, thinking the water looks absolutely boiling hot. But her nanny gently reassures her, promising that the young miss doesn't have to worry about getting hurt ever again. She vows to take perfect care of her from now on with a warm, comforting smile. Calming down, Lihua peers into the water, feeling a little suspicious of her own reflection. Suddenly, she gasps in pure shock. Her dark eyes have literally turned a glowing, brilliant sapphire blue. Meanwhile, a servant hands over an official, sealed letter from the Northern Ice Palace. Chinma casually reads it, letting out a dark chuckle at their empty threats of avenging their blood. He just smirks, finding their absolute delusion completely amusing. Back in her room, Lihua stares at her new blue eyes, trying to figure out what triggered the massive glow-up. She wonders if it was a wild side effect of whatever legendary medicine they fed her while she was unconscious. Later, she skips out of her room, happily greeting the palace maids in the hallway. She asks if they're there to clean, and a maid politely confirms. The maid then pauses, stiffly checking to see if the young miss has eaten yet. Lihua cringes internally, totally weirded out by the incredibly stiff, awkward energy they give off. She asks for her nanny, then quickly bails, shouting that she's going out to play. Sliding the door shut behind her, she lets out a massive sigh of relief. As she walks away, she notes that her newly assigned servants act way more like hardened soldiers than normal maids. She waddles through the courtyard, wondering where on earth her loyal nanny went. She suddenly remembers a maid, politely telling her to stop using formal language with her subordinates. She rubs her chin, hilariously wondering if the ruthless demon sect actually enforces a respectful, progressive workplace environment. Suddenly, she spots a figure in the distance and excitedly calls out for her nanny. But the person doesn't answer, prompting Lihua to dash through the gates after them. Instead, she completely bumps into a towering, heavily scarred man blocking the path. She jumps back, startled, and demands to know who this giant is. The scary-looking man glares down at her and casually claims he's just a passing grandpa. Lihua doesn't buy it for a second and instantly turns around, hitting him with a quick, "All right, goodbye." The man absolutely loses it, abruptly yelling that he never said he was leaving. Lihua's sweat drops, thinking this weirdo is way too temperamental for his age. Suddenly, the man opens his massive hand, offering her a sparkling ruby-red bead. She blankly asks what it is, and he just stares at her, bluntly stating that it's obviously a bead. She holds the shiny object up to the light, super confused as to why a random stranger is giving her gifts. But she quickly drops the suspicion and flashes him a brilliant, blooming smile, thanking him sweetly. The hardened elder instantly blushes at her cuteness, assuring her he put a safety seal on it so she can safely play with it. He grins wickedly, telling her that if she ever meets someone annoying, she should just throw it right at them. When she asks what it does, he completely geeks out, yelling that it'll trigger a massive explosion. He laughs like a total maniac, while Lihua groans internally, realizing this psycho is actually dead serious. Regardless, she decides to just accept the highly dangerous explosive as a token of goodwill. She tells him to wait right there and quickly rustles through a nearby flower bush. Turning back, she hands the towering demon elder a bright bouquet of yellow flowers. The hardened man instantly turns beet red, totally flustered by the sweet gesture. She innocently tells him it suits him perfectly, causing him to absolutely freak out while gently cradling the tiny flowers. In return, he aggressively dumps an entire handful of the explosive red beads straight into her tiny palms. Before she can even process it, he violently launches himself away into the sky, yelling that he's leaving. Lihua stands there completely baffled, holding enough firepower to literally level a building. Just then her nanny finally finds her, completely shocked by the handful of strange red orbs. When Lihua explains a super red-faced grandpa gave them to her, the nanny instantly sweats, realizing exactly which terrifying elder it was. The nanny quickly changes the subject, dropping to her knees to hug her miss while Lihua secretly stuffs the bombs into her pocket. Smiling warmly, the nanny takes her tiny hand and cheerfully suggests they go get something to eat. Lihua wanders through the courtyard with her nanny, casually mentioning that her appetite has been pretty low lately. Meanwhile, another servant bursts into the elder's office with an urgent update regarding the young miss. Inside, the terrifying poison elder is absolutely losing his mind, proudly showing off a tiny flower ring Lihua made him. But when he hears the news, his jaw drops and the precious flowers slip right through his fingers. The young leader grabs him by the collar, demanding to know what he gave the baby, only for the elder to casually admit he gave her literal goo poison. The elder smugly clarifies he hid the deadly bugs in a jar, not expecting her to actually eat them. The young leader sighs, asking if the old man at least managed to not get caught by Chenma. Suddenly, the head elder slams his cane down, furious that enemy spies from the Northern Ice Palace have infiltrated their ranks after seemingly abandoning Yunseol. To handle the rat problem, Chenma casually strolls down to the local village, acting as human bait. He completely pretends not to notice the assassins tailing him, setting up the perfect trap. Back at the sect, the elders discuss how rumors about Lihua's existence have been spreading like wildfire for a month. The poison elder doesn't even care about the danger, just melting over the fact that the Demon King's daughter actually uses polite language. He admits the tiny flower ring she made him almost brought him to tears for the first time in 80 years. They suddenly realize the creepy king of corpses is the only elder who hasn't given the baby a gift yet. Elsewhere in the garden, Lihua stares at her flower bouquet, finally piecing together why her eyes turned blue and how she survived. She realizes Waryon actually fed her the legendary heavenly purity dew, a priceless elixir he desperately needed for his own future escape. Feeling totally indebted to the guy who's supposed to kill her, she frustratingly decides to pay him back by making him flower bouquets. Suddenly, a pale, creepy figure looms over her, warning her that sitting on the cold ground is bad for her health. It's the king of corpses, looking like a literal zombie, who quickly apologizes for spooking her. Lihua flashes a bright smile, waving it off and admitting she just gets scared easily. The elder gently pats her head, noting how fragile her small body is. He kindly asks if he can check her pulse to make sure she isn't hurt. Without a second thought, she cheerfully thrusts her wrist right at him. The elder immediately flinches, his face turning dead serious as he scolds her for giving a stranger access to her vitals. But he gently takes her wrist anyway, funneling a bit of his energy to check her condition. He asks why she trusted him so easily with such a dangerous blind spot. Lihua smiles warmly, internally noting that this terrifying demon elder actually reminds her of a sweet neighborhood grandpa from her past life. To her, he doesn't look like a monster at all, just a nice old man. The elder finishes his check, muttering that her internal energy feels strangely old for a toddler. When Lihua says she hasn't learned martial arts, he explains that internal energy is just raw potential, and suddenly her body feels light as a feather. He tells her to remember this exact sensation and practice moving with it every single morning. Lihua is absolutely hyped, realizing she just unlocked her internal energy and is one step closer to escaping this villain lair. Deciding she deserves a reward, the King of Corpses reaches into his robes for a gift. He pulls out a long object wrapped in red cloth and tells her to open it. Lihua unwraps it to reveal a beautiful, sparkling blue crystal branch. But the second she grabs it, she gasps, feeling her own power getting completely sucked into the artifact. The elder explains it's a rare ice tree that feeds on cold internal energy, which perfectly matches her new powers. He tells her to practice holding it to feed it and letting go to cut off the energy flow. Since it's just a sapling, he warns her to start slow, and Lihua happily promises to raise it with care. When she asks what happens when it fully grows, he reveals that 10,000 crystal flowers will bloom. Lihua's eyes sparkle with pure excitement at the thought of a massive glowing tree. But when the elder casually mentions that ice tree flowers are rarer than actual jewels, Lihua's eyes literally turn into dollar signs as she realizes she's holding a pure gold mine. She launches herself at the terrifying elder, giving him a massive hug and declaring him the absolute best grandpa ever. Fast forward 1 month, Lihua is sitting in her dark room, groaning in absolute agony. The stupid ice tree is completely leeching her energy dry, and the grandpa's advice to just let go isn't working at all. She screams at the glowing stick, begging it to get off her so she can finally go to sleep. But the magical branch just floats there, greedily absorbing her aura. Desperate, she waves her arms wildly, even offering the branch her own bed and pillow if it'll just stop eating. Collapsing from exhaustion, Lihua suddenly snaps, her aura violently erupting into flames as she takes this greedy stick as a direct challenge to her authority. Lihua absolutely loses it, daring the greedy stick to keep eating her energy until it literally throws up. But after a few seconds of blazing fury, she slumps over, panting heavily as the magic branch stops glowing. She smirks, thinking she finally overwhelmed the magical artifact. With a crazy look in her eyes, she doubles down, refusing to withdraw her energy now that she's established dominance. But suddenly, the branch starts to glow again with an intense, blinding white light. Before her very eyes, the magical energy erupts outward, blooming into a stunning cluster of crystal blue flowers. The ice gold blossoms sparkle like rare diamonds, looking way more expensive than any normal jewel. Just as she's admiring her new treasure, the nanny peeks into the room, totally surprised to see the young miss still awake. Lihua excitedly holds up the glowing branch, showing off the gorgeous blue flowers she just grew. The nanny chuckles, telling her there's absolutely nothing she can't do, but softly insists it's finally time for bed. Lihua agrees, casually mentioning she has a super important place to visit the next day. She smiles to herself, internally plotting to go pay back a major debt. The next morning, Lihua marches straight toward a massive, forbidden rock wall, completely ignoring her nanny's frantic warnings about getting caught. Ignoring the danger, the tiny toddler confidently pushes open the heavy, hidden door leading into the mountain. As she steps inside, she immediately notices how damp, dark, and stuffy the secret cave is. Looking around the barren stone room, she gags internally, wondering how anyone could survive in here eating nothing but gross, tasteless bigu pills. She completely ignores the spooky atmosphere, solely focused on finding the villain she came to see. Suddenly, a voice echoes from the shadows. It's Waryon, stepping out and looking completely shocked to see the young miss in his secret training ground. He drops to his knees, startled by the sound of small, approaching footsteps. The tiny footsteps echo across the stone floor before finally stopping right in front of him. Waryon looks down, absolutely stunned to see the tiny toddler standing right there in the dark. He stares at her in total disbelief, bluntly asking how a literal child managed to break into his isolated cave. Lihua immediately acts cute, nervously fidgeting with her little pouch and lying that she just got lost. Waryon groans, rubbing his temples, and strictly tells her that this is a forbidden area she absolutely cannot enter. Lihua completely ignores his scolding, cheerfully trotting closer and saying she only came to give him something. But as she runs forward, her tiny foot catches on a crack in the uneven stone floor. She trips and totally eats dirt, tumbling forward while her little pouch goes flying through the air. Sitting up, she rubs her nose, wincing in pain before realizing she dropped her precious bag. Waryon watches in stunned silence as the pouch spills open, revealing it's completely stuffed with sweet persimmons and wrapped candies. Liwa blushes furiously, super embarrassed that the thoughtful care package she put her heart and soul into now looks like a messy pile of junk. Waryon just stares blankly at the snacks as Liwa quickly scoops them back into the bag and shoves it into his hands. He stiffens, coldly rejecting the food by claiming he can't eat sweets while training. Lihua pouts, instantly calling his bluff and pointing out that his cleared arteries mean he can definitely snack a little. She stubbornly holds out a piece of dried fruit, practically begging him to just eat one tiny bite. Waryon hesitates, staring at the snack, so Lihua dramatically asks if he seriously thinks it's poisoned. He scoffs, telling her to think whatever she wants as he quickly turns away. But Lihua is relentless, marching right up to him and aggressively holding the snack to his lips. Completely thrown off by her persistence, he looks down with a complicated expression, genuinely confused as to why the enemy's daughter is treating him so well. Lihua knows if Waryon was really out for cold-blooded revenge, he never would have saved her life using his rare heavenly purity dew. She confidently tells him to hurry up and eat it, refusing to take no for an answer. Waryon finally takes a small bite and Lihua beams, happily offering to bring him even more snacks if he likes it. He immediately shuts that down, warning her that she absolutely cannot come back to this forbidden cave. Despite his harsh words, Waryon quietly wonders what on earth goes through this strange kid's head as Lihua just smiles and agrees. A week later, Lihua is sitting in her lavish room, staring down at a massive feast of rice, pork belly, and steamed buns. But instead of eating, the nanny watches in total shock as Lihua frantically stuffs an entire piece of braised pork belly straight into her pocket. The nanny sweat drops, asking if sneaking greasy pork belly to the successor is taking it a bit too far. Lihua pauses, realizing the meat will definitely taste gross if it gets cold before she reaches him. The nanny suddenly flinches, reminding Lihua that she strictly promised never to visit the successor's cave again. Lihua nervously clutches her stuffed pocket, trying to bargain that she'll just drop off the food and leave. But the nanny goes full mom mode, standing tall with her hands on her hips and scolding her, insisting that interrupting someone's closed-door cultivation is the ultimate taboo. The little girl shudders, imagining being stuck in a dark cave with only nasty pills to eat. Her nanny gives her a warm hug, comforting her. She explains that the future leader of the demon sect has to learn how to completely detach from all emotions. But the girl knows the truth about Waryon. In his dreams, he doesn't want to lead a terrifying cult, he just wants to live a peaceful life raising livestock. She promises the nanny she'll behave, but the mischievous glint in her eye says otherwise. The moment she gets the chance, she sneaks right back into the forbidden cave. At first, the gloomy cavern looks completely empty. She turns to leave, thinking he's just avoiding her. Suddenly, Waryon stumbles out of the shadows, panting heavily. He drops to the ground like a broken puppet, and she immediately rushes to his side. He looks up, totally shocked that she actually came back. She frantically checks him for injuries, begging him to leave the cave with her. She points out how terrible he looks, pleading for him to stop this madness. But Waryon just turns away, asking her to leave him alone. Refusing to give up, she grabs his robes and tries to pull him to his feet. With a frustrated shout, he swats her hand away and tells her to get lost. Tears well up in her eyes, but instead of giving up, she decides to get back up. She dashes out of the cave, leaving him alone in the dark. Outside, her nanny is surprised to see her back so soon. The little girl drags the nanny toward the cave, begging her to help the suffering boy. But the nanny flat out refuses, stating that no one can interfere with closed-door cultivation. She pulls the struggling girl away, telling her it's time to head back. The nanny coldly adds that if he dies from this, he was simply too weak to lead the sect anyway. As they walk away in the sunlight, Waryon completely collapses on the cold cave floor. Back in her room, the girl is pouting under the covers while the rain pours outside. The nanny tries to cheer her up by offering her favorite toys. When that doesn't work, she offers to bring in some snacks. The nanny excitedly heads to the kitchen to whip up some pancakes. The second the door shuts, the girl throws off the blankets, ready to lock in. She rummages through her shelves, looking to pack anything expensive. Using her own cultivation, she manages to summon a magical ice flower. It takes serious focus, but she needs enough goods to make a living on the outside. She drops the glowing blue flower onto the floor. After a sweaty grinding session, she manages to craft 20 of them and packs her bag. Seizing the perfect window during the servant's shift change, she completely ghosts the room. Meanwhile, Waryon is meditating through the pain, trying to hold on. He suddenly hears a desperate voice screaming at him not to go outside. A horrifying memory flashes in his mind, a young boy watching a blood-soaked swordsman. The red-haired killer turns around, glaring with terrifying crimson eyes. Snapped back to reality, Waryon hears tiny footsteps approaching. He looks up, absolutely stunned to see the little girl standing there. She looks incredibly guilty, knowing she broke the rules again. She tearfully admits that she just couldn't leave him to suffer all by himself in this cruel place. Seeing her state, Waryon clenches his fist in concern. He quickly steps closer, asking if she's hurt anywhere. He grabs her hand to check her temperature, ignoring her protests. Panic hits him when he realizes she feels like straight-up ice. She just gives him a pure, innocent smile, explaining she got soaked in the storm. She tilts her head, completely confused as to why he's staring at her with such intense worry. Waryon immediately tells her to get back inside because she's looking super pale, offering to escort her. But she grabs his robes and drops a bombshell. She doesn't just want to leave the cave, she wants to escape the demon sect entirely. She insists that he completely hates it here and has zero desire to be the next leader. When she points out that he just wants a normal life, Waryon grits his teeth, totally triggered. She yanks his arm, desperately promising to help him escape so he can finally live freely. Waryon is absolutely stunned, hesitating for a second as her genuine words hit him right in the feels. The next thing you know, the two of them are sprinting through the dense, rainy forest, using the fog as cover. The little girl is practically glowing with excitement, thrilled that her rainy escape plan is actually working out. They finally reach a massive stone gate, with wide stairs leading straight down into a nearby village. As they push through, she excitedly explains that they can make a total killing selling the stuff she packed. But suddenly her heart starts pounding out of her chest and cold sweat drips down her face. As her vision blurs and she tells him to run, Waryon gets insanely dizzy, his mind flooded with a dark flashback of someone telling him to seek revenge. Right at that moment, the little girl's legs completely give out and she face splints onto the stone floor. Waryon stares in shock, her passionate words echoing in his mind about how much he hates the sect. He stands there frozen, wondering how on earth she knew about the secret daydream he has every single night. He realizes that if a certain horrific tragedy hadn't happened in his past. A flashback hits, showing young Waryon spying on his father chatting with the terrifying red-haired man, Chinma. His father warmly pats his head, introducing the fearsome leader as just a good friend. They seem to get along perfectly fine, completely hiding the nightmare that was about to unfold. Waryon remembers those chilling crimson eyes, realizing he never could have predicted the absolute bloodbath that followed. Later that same night, Kid Waryon is fast asleep when his bedroom door suddenly slides open. A hand clamps over his mouth, frantically shaking him awake in the pitch-black room. It's his mother, holding onto him for dear life like he's the only thing keeping her together. She shoves him into a wooden chest, desperately whispering for him to stay completely silent. Outside the box, a terrifying aura fills the room as a dark voice demands to know where he is, but his mom stubbornly plays dumb. Peeking from the shadows, little Waryon hears his mom scream for him to run, followed by a sickening slash. Outside, the servants scream in pure horror at the gruesome scene. Trembling like a leaf, Waryon carefully peeks out from his hiding spot, looking for his parents. He spots Chinma standing coldly over his father's completely wrecked, lifeless body. The closet door rips open, and Chinma stares down at the terrified little boy. After that nightmare, Waryon was kidnapped by the demon sect and forced into a brutal, never-ending training camp. But he took the beatings without complaining, entirely fueled by a burning desire to avenge his parents. He willingly consumed the agonizing heavenly purity dew just to multiply his strength, knowing Chinma was watching his every move. Any sweet daydream he ever had of raising dogs and living a peaceful life had to be permanently deleted from his brain. Snapping back to the present, Waryon remembers the little girl's desperate promise to give him his freedom back. Staring at her unconscious body, he realizes he just couldn't reject her pure, sweet intentions. She had always been the only bright spot in his dark life, offering him sweet treats when no one else cared. The very thought of actual freedom hits him right in the chest. For a split second, he feels the insane rush of the one thing he's always secretly craved. But as he tries to carry her away, his own body completely gives out, dropping him to his knees like a ragdoll. And just like that, the illusion shatters and all his eagerness for freedom instantly vaporizes. Fast forward and they are back in her room, with the nanny absolutely losing her mind over their state. Ignoring her panic, Waryon immediately orders the nanny to boil some hot water to save the freezing girl. The nanny bolts out the door without asking questions, leaving Waryon standing over the sick girl's bed. He opens her little travel bag and is completely stunned by the glowing pile of magical ice flowers she crafted. Holding one delicately, he realizes she totally drained her own cultivation to make these fragile crystals. He pieces it together, she literally worked herself to the point of fainting just to fund their escape. His hand trembles as he clutches the glowing flower, realizing she risked absolutely everything just for his sake. He gazes down at her pale face, feeling a massive wave of guilt for letting her do something so wildly reckless. Staring at the melting ice, Waryon comes to a dark, heartbreaking realization: being together is completely toxic for both of them. The girl tosses and turns, groggily waking up to find Waryon standing right next to her bed. She blinks away the sleep, totally confused by his sudden appearance. She sits up and quietly asks why he's out of his cultivation cave. Tears prick her eyes as she asks if he has to go back into that dark, lonely place just because of her. But Waryon suddenly crushes one of her precious ice flowers in his hand, harshly telling her not to misunderstand. He puts up an ice gold front, claiming her life means absolutely nothing to him. But as he looks away, his trembling hand betrays him. He tries to convince himself she's just his enemy's daughter. He leans in and grabs her shoulders, fiercely threatening to break her neck if she ever pulls a reckless stunt like that again. Fast forward 3 years later, the nanny closes the windows, telling the young miss it's time for bed. Since the nanny is heading to her hometown for the night, she strictly warns the girl not to wander around in the dark. The girl smiles, holding her pillow, playfully teasing the nanny about going to meet a secret lover. Flustered, the nanny pats her down, insisting it's strictly a business trip. She warmly rubs the girl's head, saying goodnight and telling her to behave. Left alone in her room, the girl rolls over, thinking about Waryon still stuck in closed-door cultivation. She remembers that rainy night when he returned all the survival treasures she packed for him and went back to his sad cave. But then she pouts, grumbling about how he actually kept a few of her handmade ice flowers without saying a word. Suddenly, a magical blue wand starts poking her aggressively in the back. She turns around, annoyed, realizing it's Waryon using his energy to bother her from afar. She scolds him, complaining that he's been eating way too much of her energy lately. Frustrated, she turns her back on the floating wand, declaring she's cutting him off for the night. But the wand just goes wild, mercilessly jabbing her in the back like a rapid-fire woodpecker. She sits up abruptly to yell at him, but completely freezes mid-sentence. A horrible metallic smell creeps into the room, and she instantly recognizes the scent of fresh blood. Trusting her gut, she quickly grabs a pouch of explosive pills just in case things go south. Gripping her magical wand tight, she tiptoes out of her room to investigate the dark hallway. She peeks around the corner and her heart completely drops. There's a terrifying masked man standing over one of the estate maids. Without hesitating, the assassin brutally pierces the maid's shoulder with his sword, demanding to know where the brat is. Hiding behind the wall, the girl realizes with absolute horror that this psycho is hunting her. Panic sets in, she tightly grips her wand, knowing she needs to sprint to the entrance and scream for help. But as she tries to back away, the wand stubbornly drags against the floorboards. Suddenly, the masked killer teleports right behind her like a literal ghost. He flashes a sadistic, blood-stained smile, mocking her for trying to hide. Suppressing her massive panic, she slowly turns around, knowing she absolutely cannot show fear. The assassin steps closer, dripping blood everywhere, and playfully asks if she's scared of a monster like him. Staggering back, she acts completely innocent, pointing at his scars and asking how he hurt his mouth. He casually explains that his master ripped his face open just for being too noisy, bragging about pulling out people's nails. Playing the ultimate innocent card, she asks if he wants to play hide-and-seek since he didn't have any friends growing up. The killer's smile instantly drops into pure malice as he raises his blade, asking if he can slice her wrists first. He taps his chin, explaining that his client specifically ordered an eye for an eye, making this a total revenge hit. Her mind races, realizing he's from the Northern Sea faction. She desperately needs a distraction. She fakes a pout, telling him he must be in too much pain to play properly. Amused, he decides he's just going to torture her until she shows him the way around the estate. He steps back and sadistically tells her she gets to choose exactly where she wants to get stabbed. Thinking quickly, she offers her arm, knowing if she gets stabbed in the leg, she'll be totally useless. He chuckles, winding up to throw his dagger, warning her that moving will result in instant death. As the blade flies straight at her face, she completely locks in. With a massive swing, she uses her glowing wand and absolutely parries the dagger midair. The assassin is caught totally off guard by the explosive burst of magical energy. Before he can recover, the severely injured maid lunges from the shadows, wrapping her arms around the killer and screaming for the girl to run. As the maid gets brutally slashed, the little girl absolutely bolts down the dark hallway. She yanks open a door, desperately trying to remember which room is actually safe. Hiding behind a folding screen, she curls into a ball, sobbing and trembling as the reality of the attack sets in. Outside, the creepy assassin's shadow looms against the paper doors as he sings a twisted game of hide-and-seek. She covers her mouth in pure terror, totally confused as to why this psycho is hunting her instead of Aquarion. In her panic, she mentally cries out for her dad, the terrifying red-haired sect leader, begging for anyone to save her. Suddenly, a voice whispers "Young Miss" from the shadows, making her aggressively flinch. It's Warion. He quickly clamps a hand over her mouth, signaling her to stay completely silent. Tears stream down her face as she looks up at him, feeling a massive wave of relief. He's covered in blood and breathing heavily, quickly checking to see if she got hurt during the chaos. He explains that he sensed something was totally off and came straight here to find her. Gently wiping the tears from her cheek, he looks incredibly relieved that she's unharmed. She frantically babbles about the scary man trying to kill her and the brave maid who took the hit. Warion tightly squeezes her hand, looking her in the eye and assuring her that none of this nightmare is her fault. He helps her to her feet, asking if she has enough energy to walk. Opening a hidden compartment, he reveals a secret passageway and tells her to run straight down to the town. But she grabs his sleeve, desperately begging him to come with her since they can just hide from the one killer. Warion glances away, grimly dropping the horrifying fact that there's way more than just one assassin out there. He draws his sword, promising to follow her soon, and tells her to get moving. She grits her teeth, utterly terrified that he's going to face a complete bloodbath alone just for her sake. She knows he's only been in closed-door training for 3 years. He's not some overpowered master yet, he's literally still a kid. She completely refuses to leave, grabbing his robes and sobbing for him to escape with her. She reminds him that he literally threatened to snap her neck earlier, demanding to know why he's suddenly risking his life for her. His expression softens, and he quietly admits he doesn't hate her, even if he doesn't fully understand his own actions. He holds her hands, agreeing that running away together is the smart move, but saying he just can't do it. Without warning, he shoves her backward into the dark tunnels. As she falls, he calmly instructs her to find the biggest house in town once she escapes. She reaches out for him, but he slams the secret door shut right in her face. Just seconds later, the smiling psycho slides the main door open, stepping into the room to look for his prey. Meanwhile, a flashback reveals the nanny happily reporting the young Miss's massive energy growth to the sect leader. The nanny beams with pride, noting that even though the girl can't use her internal energy yet, her potential is insane. Chinma casually sips his tea, planning to personally teach her how to control her demonic energy once he returns to the estate. He sets his cup down, having a rare moment of vulnerability, admitting he originally just wanted a normal life with a family. But as the ruthless leader of the demon sect, he knows he has to secure a position of power that absolutely no one can challenge. Just then, a servant reports that the rival ice palace hasn't made a move, giving Chinma the green light to head home. A rare smile crosses his face as he thinks about finally teaching his daughter how to weaponize her ice powers. He remembers the pure warmth of her tiny hand, something completely alien to his cold, violent world. But the wholesome moment is completely shattered when a terrified scout bursts through the doors. The bloodied scout faceplants onto the floor, screaming that the ice palace just raided the main estate. Chinma is stunned, demanding to know what happened to the powerful elders guarding the place. The scout frantically explains that the elders were lured away, leaving the estate completely swarmed by enemy spies. The nanny gasps in pure horror, instantly realizing the young miss is trapped in the middle of a war zone. Chinma's eyes narrow into daggers as he realizes the enemy's lack of movement was a massive baitan switch. Dropping to her knees, the nanny desperately begs the sect leader for permission to launch a rescue mission. Without a single word, Chinma turns his back and walks away, his robes trailing behind him. The nanny stares after him in absolute shock as he leaves her totally hanging. Cutting back to the present, Waryon stands face to face with the creepy masked assassin. The psycho glares at him with that messed up smile, threatening to punish him if he lies about the girl's location. He casually points his blood-soaked sword, offering to let Waryon live if he just snitches. But Waryon just lets out an exhausted sigh and coldly tells the killer to get out of his face. Annoyed by Waryon's disrespect, the scarred assassin flashes a wicked grin. He steps forward, casually asking if the kid actually knows how to use that sword. Sparks fly as their blades clash, but Waryon is clearly struggling under the heavy strike. The assassin realizes the boy's got skills and mentions his client ordered him to kill anyone wielding a blade. His eyes glow blood red in the dark as he commands his goons to play with Waryon while he hunts down the little girl. Waryon staggers backward, completely overwhelmed and bleeding heavily. With a brutal slam, the assassin sends him flying, leaving the little girl totally startled in her hiding spot. She clutches her bag, crying her eyes out over how absolutely helpless she feels. She wipes away her tears, trying to convince herself that running out to find the adults is the smartest play. Her inner monologue tries to assure her that Waryon has literal plot armor and won't die. After all, he's the actual male protagonist of this world's storyline. But a chilling thought hits her. The story has completely derailed from the original plot, so his survival isn't guaranteed anymore. Panicking, she reaches into her pouch, desperately searching for anything that can help. Suddenly, her eyes light up as her fingers brush against a familiar item. She pulls out a handful of glowing red glass beads gifted by her grandfather. He had specifically warned her that throwing these things would trigger a massive explosion. Back in the hallway, Waryon is completely surrounded, cursing the endless wave of assassins. He gasps for air, his sweaty hands barely able to grip his sliding sword. His focus slips for a split second as he desperately wonders if the little girl made it out of the passageway. He realizes his mistake a moment too late as a blade swings right at his blind spot. But out of nowhere, the little girl sprints in and violently shoves him out of the way of the deadly strike. Waryon hits the floor with a heavy thud, absolutely stunned to see her standing there. He scrambles up, completely flabbergasted that she didn't escape. She just smiles through her tears, letting out a massive sigh of relief that she made it in time. Waryon aggressively rubs his eyes, half convinced he's literally hallucinating right now. He demands to know why she came back, and she reveals the explosive red glass beads. She boldly declares that these grenades are their absolute ticket out of here. Knowing they don't have many shots at this, she asks him when she should throw them. Standing back to back with him, she drops her head and softly apologizes. Tears stream down her face as she says she's sorry for being selfish, being a burden, and putting him in such lethal danger. She finishes by apologizing for almost leaving him behind to die alone. Meanwhile, the surrounding assassins suddenly halt their attack, waiting for their leader since they finally found the target. Waryon's bleeding hand trembles as he realizes their temporary break won't last long. He grits his teeth, completely confused as to why her emotional pain hurts him just as much as his own wounds. Out of nowhere, she asks if he'll share dried persimmons with her again once they escape, calling it the best food she's ever had. Touched, Waryon clenches his fist and promises to eat whatever she brings him, even during his strict closed-door training. Her face instantly lights up with joy, but Waryon quickly snaps her focus back to the front. The scarred leader steps out of the shadows, his creepy smile stretching from ear to ear as he locks onto them. He casually strides forward, mocking them for playing hard to get in such a massive estate. The psycho confidently asks if she's finally ready to come with him. Seeing the two kids ready to fight, he chuckles, twistedly finding their last stand cute. Waryon completely ignores him, whispering to the girl to throw the bead the absolute second he gives the signal. He tightly grabs her hand, firmly promising that this time they are escaping together. With a massive surge of internal energy, Waryon's sword begins to glow with a blinding white light. The scarred leader pauses, genuinely impressed by the kid's insane talent for his age. But he mockingly asks if Waryon seriously thinks one sword is enough to stop his entire crew. Waryon coldly replies that he doesn't need it. In a jaw-dropping flex, Waryon completely shatters his own blade, triggering the legendary broken blade arts, a skill that takes decades to master. The Waryon assassin clutches his bleeding head, laughing maniacally as he realizes this kid isn't prey, he's an absolute tiger. A scream rings out as Waryon gives the little girl the ultimate green light. She lobs the red bead into the air, and it crackles with volatile lightning right as the assassins gasp in pure panic. The red bead detonates with a massive, blinding flash, completely catching the assassin off guard. Seizing the moment, the little girl and Waryon absolutely book it down the tunnel, panting heavily. But as they run, Waryon notices her face is getting dangerously pale. He tells her to stop and offers to carry her, but she stubbornly insists she's fine. Ignoring her protests, he pulls out a special healing ointment, telling her she needs it way more than he does. As he applies it to her bleeding shoulder, she flinches and cries out in pain. But she quickly covers it up with a big, fake smile, claiming it doesn't hurt one bit. Waryon knows she's totally capping. The ointment stops bleeding, but it definitely doesn't numb the pain. To distract her, he hands her the jar and tells her to apply some to his wounds instead. She carefully rubs the medicine into his cuts, murmuring about how much it must hurt. Suddenly, Waryon feels her hands turning ice cold against his skin. He realizes with a sickening drop in his stomach that she's lost way too much blood for the medicine to fix. She slumps forward and Waryon holds her tight, desperately begging for anyone to save her. Without hesitating, he scoops her up and breaks into a frantic sprint toward the exit. He gives her a hopeful smile, telling her they're just one door away from the safe village. He pushes the heavy wooden doors open, expecting freedom. But instead, the scarred assassin and his goons are waiting right outside to welcome them. Waryon freezes in pure shock, stepping back to shield the girl. The psycho smirks, bragging that he easily predicted they'd head for the village. He levels his sword at them, furious that her little grenade actually took out some of his men. Because of that, he promises they won't get an easy death, threatening to carve out their eyeballs. Waryon grips his shattered sword, knowing he can't dodge without exposing the young miss to a fatal strike. The assassin lunges, purposefully missing by an inch just to toy with them like a total sadist. Then his eyes turn pitch black, declaring he won't miss the second time. But before he can swing, the little girl steps out from behind Waryon. She throws her arms out, screaming at the killer to leave them alone. Her magical blue wand suddenly pulses with insane energy, swirling with icy mist. The assassin bursts out laughing, mocking her for trying to fight back with a literal stick. But his laugh dies in his throat when snow abruptly starts falling all around them. He looks around in utter confusion, wondering where the sudden blizzard came from. In a split second, the snow activates, completely flash-freezing the assassin into a solid block of ice. Waryon watches in awe as her ice magic perfectly targets the enemies without touching him. But the spell drains her completely, and she collapses like a ragdoll straight into his arms. He catches her freezing body, realizing they have to ditch the main path and escape through the mountains. He throws her on his back and dashes into the pitch-black forest. But his vision starts blurring wildly. Using that crazy broken blade art earlier completely emptied his energy tank. He bites his lip to stay awake, determined to get her to safety no matter what. Suddenly, a terrifying pressure forces him to his knees, stopping him dead in his tracks. He whips around, pointing his shattered blade and screaming that he'll kill whoever's there. But stepping out of the shadows is the sect leader himself, looking down at them like a literal god. Chinma gently takes his unconscious daughter from Waryon's arms, quietly acknowledging his hard work. The scene shifts to a blood-red moon as the sect leader ominously floats above the surviving assassins. He glares down with pure rage, while the thawed-out scarred leader staggers to his feet below. With a single, terrifying flick of his wrist, Chinma summons a massive wave of dark energy. The assassin thrashes helplessly in the air, crying out for mercy as the sect leader asks who sent him. Desperate, the killer snitches that they're from the black sect hired by the Ice Palace, begging to be spared in exchange for intel. Chinma isn't having it. He teleports forward and violently crushes the guy's throat, making him scream in agony. The other assassins gasp in absolute horror as their leader's blood is literally sucked out of his body, the forbidden essence absorption arts. Chinma lands softly holding his daughter, flashing a demonic glowing red smile that promises absolute carnage. He coldly declares that not even their corpses will remain, and the forest fills with the horrific, bloody screams of the dying assassins. Chinma quietly carries his unconscious daughter away from the absolute bloodbath he just created. Looking down at her pale face, a dark, heavy guilt washes over the fearsome sect leader. He reflects on his cursed past, remembering how every single person he ever loved died a miserable death. Because of that trauma, he intentionally pushed her away, pretending she didn't exist just to keep a target off her back. He actually debated sending her far away from the demonic sect and faking her death so she could live peacefully. But after seeing her almost get assassinated inside his own walls, he realizes his whole strategy was completely flawed. Sitting by her bedside, he decides the safest place for her isn't in hiding, it's right by his side under his absolute protection. He gently brushes the hair from her face, softly whispering her real name, Yoon Ryung. His protective father mode instantly switches to pure vengeance as he orders a shadowy subordinate to raise the flag and summon the experts. The ninja instantly bows, disappearing into the shadows to carry out the command. The next morning, the sunlight pours into the room as Chinma anxiously watches over Yoon Ryung. The sect's top physician finishes checking her pulse and steps back with his diagnosis. The doctor explains that because her internal energy is totally twisted, forcing medicine on her is a bad idea, she just needs natural rest. Chinma asks for a time frame, and the doctor estimates it'll take about a month for her energy flow to reset. A terrifying smirk creeps onto Chinma's face. A month is more than enough time to completely obliterate the northern castle. The elders in the room bow deeply, fully ready to unleash absolute hell on their master's command. He immediately dispatches the King of Corpses to totally annihilate the Black Gang assassins working in the Central District. The creepy, pale elder bows, clearly thrilled by the assignment. He flashes a wicked, bloodthirsty smile, admitting he holds some massive grudges against the Northern Castle anyway. Knowing his leader wants to punish the castle personally, the elder is just happy to clean up the trash. The old man's eyes narrow menacingly as he notes that nobody gets away with hurting the boss's daughter. He chuckles, incredibly hyped to finally bust out his forbidden, frozen blood corpse technique after years of peace. Left alone with Yoon Ryung again, Chinma softly pinches her cheek. He stands over her bed like a literal guardian angel, swearing that she will never have to experience fear like that again. Outside, the courtyard is buzzing with hundreds of elite demonic sect members who rushed over after seeing the emergency flag. The murmurs instantly die down as the heavy double doors swing open. Every single warrior drops to their knees in perfect sync, greeting the heavenly demon. Chinma looks down from the balcony and drops the coldest order imaginable. Within a month, the northern castle must disappear. He explicitly tells them not to bother hiding their tracks. He wants the enemies slaughtered as cruelly as humanly possible. He glares into the horizon, wanting every living soul in the martial arts world to witness the brutal consequences of touching his daughter. With his terrifying decree given, his red cape billows behind him as he heads out to start the massacre. Sometime later, Yoon Ryung finally wakes up, sitting in bed completely dazed after draining all her energy. The fog clears, and her first thought is pure panic about whether Ak Waryun survived the night. She remembers him telling her to run, feeling terribly guilty for leaving the future protagonist to face the assassins alone. But she quickly shakes it off, flopping back onto the bed and telling herself that if she survived, his literal plot armor definitely kept him alive. Suddenly, the bedroom doors slide open and her nanny bursts in, crying her eyes out. The nanny drops to the floor and hugs her tight, sobbing and apologizing for leaving her post that night. Yoon Ryung smiles sweetly, holding the nanny's face and assuring her it totally wasn't her fault. The nanny wipes her tears, pointing out that Yoon Ryung always acts tough, but the little girl insists her shoulder is genuinely fine now. Getting down to business, Yoon Ryung quickly asks the most important question: is the sect heir safe? The nanny brightens up, explaining that Waryun recovered way faster than her and is literally already back to training. Yoon Ryung is absolutely mind-blown. She can't believe a 12-year-old kid went through that bloodbath and instantly went back to the grind. Relieved that he's okay, she shifts gears and asks what happened to the maids and, more importantly, the northern castle that sent the killers. The nanny casually drops an absolute nuke. The entire northern castle and the Black Gang assassins have been completely wiped off the map. Yoon Ryung's jaw drops. A massive clan doesn't just vanish overnight. She asks if her dad did it and the nanny nods. Furthermore, her dad officially announced her true identity to the entire world. Yoon Ryung realizes only a select few knew about her before. The nanny gently explains that her father's cold shoulder all these years wasn't because he hated her. The realization hits Yoon Ryung right in the feels. He completely isolated her just to protect her from his enemies. She asks what this public announcement means for her now. The nanny smiles, saying she is officially known as the most precious existence in the demonic sect. The nanny's eyes turn fiercely loyal as she declares that everyone now knows one simple rule: touching Yoon Ryung means catching an instant death sentence. Yoon Ryung stands there, letting it sink in that she is officially the most precious existence in the entire demonic sect. Her nanny walks in carrying yet another massive pile of gifts, noting that the sect members have been sending them non-stop since the public announcement. Yoon Ryung blushes, feeling super awkward about being doted on, but admits all these freebies will make excellent escape funds. She peeks out the door, noticing the terrifying servants and disciples acting completely out of character just to impress her. The nanny happily informs her that the biggest presents are actually coming straight from the vicious elders. Yoon Ryung is totally bewildered as to why these ruthless killers are treating her like royalty when she still secretly plans to run away. But a dark thought creeps in. She seriously wonders if she even has a chance of escaping with her overpowered dad and the terrifying elders watching her every move. Snapping out of her thoughts, she calls out to her nanny. She digs around in her little pouch for a second. She pulls out a beautifully crafted glowing blue ice flower. She hands it to the nanny, proudly declaring that she saved the absolute prettiest one just for her. The nanny is incredibly touched, blushing and saying she really didn't have to give her anything. When Yoon Ryung asks if she doesn't like it, the nanny totally fangirls, dramatically claiming she would happily drink poison if it came from the young miss. Yoon Ryung beams with a bright smile, telling her to wear it as an accessory. Later, as she ties up her pouch, she notices her magical wand has been weirdly dormant lately. Suddenly, her shadow guard drops from the ceiling like a literal ninja, making her completely jump out of her skin. The guard quickly apologizes for the scare and announces that the sect leader has arrived. Yoon Ryung whips her head around, her eyes going wide. She looks out into the courtyard in pure disbelief. Chinma strides toward her, and for a second, she visualizes a modern-day AU where they're just a normal, happy family taking a stroll. Tears well up in her eyes as she realizes this terrifying warlord is the one person who will always have her back. She practically sprints toward him, but Chinma holds up a hand to stop her. He abruptly commands her to stay right there. Confused, she pauses, and he awkwardly explains that he's not exactly clean at the moment. He gestures to his robes, which are absolutely drenched in the blood of the enemies he just slaughtered. Yoon Ryung gets teary-eyed, thinking he's an idiot for worrying about ruining her clothes after he literally wiped out an entire castle for her sake. He clarifies that he just doesn't want her smelling like copper and gore. Ignoring his warning completely, she screams "Dad," and tackles him into a massive, desperate hug. Chinma's cold demeanor melts instantly, and he gently wraps his arms around his little girl. She completely breaks down, sobbing into his chest that she was absolutely terrified she'd never see him again. He holds her close, softly promising that he's never going anywhere and warning her to be careful not to get hurt. With a gentle smile, the most dangerous man in the world tells her that she's the only one who could ever hurt him. He lifts her up, wiping away her tears and comforting her as she continues to wail. The terrifying elders walk in, and Chinma immediately asks why she's still crying, promising to completely erase anyone who upsets her. The Poison King flashes a wholesome, grandfatherly smile, telling her she just needs to focus on growing up healthy. The other elder chimes in, insisting she's way too small and offering to carry her everywhere. Chinma instantly gets defensive and totally shuts that idea down. The elder then playfully warns her to stop crying or she'll get puffy frog eyes, teasing that she'll still be pretty anyway. Yoon Ryung finally giggles, wiping her tears at the silly joke. She looks up at the two massive, intimidating elders standing before her. With her big doe eyes, she asks if it's okay to just call them grandpas. The two ruthless killers completely freeze, totally buffering at the adorable request. A second later, they absolutely lose their minds with joy, eagerly accepting the title and begging her to call them that all the time. But the wholesome moment abruptly derails when Chinma grabs her tiny hands, completely stressing out over how small they are. He inspects her nails, paranoid that her medical treatment wasn't effective enough to heal her properly. Within seconds, the overprotective dad and the two grandpas are huddled around her, seriously debating if her fingers are too short to grab things. Yoon Ryung makes a hilarious blank face, totally flabbergasted by their ridiculous overreaction. But looking at these terrifying men fussing over her like she's made of glass, it finally hits her. She looks up at her dad, realizing she could never bring herself to abandon them. Even though she knows the demonic sect is destined to be wiped out by Waryeon's revenge in the future, she accepts her fate. She's staying right here. Sometime later, the elders are having a meeting, noting that Chinma is in an unusually fantastic mood, guessing it's because his precious daughter is absolutely crushing her martial arts training. Chinma watches proudly as his 8-year-old daughter effortlessly recreates the Northern Castle's legendary white fire sword technique. An elder slams his hand on the table, totally confused as to why the rival Murim sect wants to meet when they already know Chinma wiped out the Northern Castle. Another elder sighs, guessing the Murim sect just wants to check the demonic sect's current status since they haven't interacted in ages. A younger, hot-headed elder argues that their reputation has absolutely skyrocketed since they eliminated the hated Black Gang and Northern Castle. Chinma narrows his glowing red eyes, suspecting the main sect thinks they've gone soft and are trying to use them as pawns. But then the sect leader makes a massive decision. It's finally time to open their doors to the outside world. The hot-headed elder totally freaks out, warning that the Murim sect probably didn't even expect a yes and was just testing their response. Chinma rests his chin on his hand, calmly stating that this decision is entirely for his daughter's sake. The elders are completely mind-blown. They immediately protest, warning that the Murim sect is full of backstabbing hypocrites. They argue that letting the pure young miss hang around those shady politicians will absolutely corrupt her. A flashback hits showing the dark past. 300 years ago, the Murim sect begged for help, only to use the demonic sect's kids as literal human shields. The elders angrily declare they refuse to mix with people who call that kind of betrayal justice. Chinma scoffs, offended that they think his daughter is actually dull enough to fall for such obvious traps. The elders awkwardly backpedal, explaining they just don't want her getting hurt since she's too young to spot a betrayer. Chinma smiles confidently, promising that he will personally be by her side, ensuring absolutely no one puts her in danger. The oldest elder nods in agreement, realizing this is the perfect chance to show the young miss that true justice isn't about morals, it's about absolute strength. He points out that the outside world has branded them as an evil group for centuries, and they've never cared enough to change that image. But now, as the first child ever born directly to the sect leader, the young miss will be judged constantly. The elders proudly declare they are completely fine with being treated like irredeemable villains by the rest of the world. But they absolutely refuse to let their precious young miss be treated with that same fear and disgust. The old man explains that if they open up and play nice, the public's view will slowly shift, ultimately making the world a much safer place for her. Chinma agrees with the logic but coldly adds that the Murim sect has to accept their terms. There will be zero compromises. He officially orders the elders to send word to the Murim sect that they accept the proposal. The sect leader turns around, his dragon robes flowing, and declares the grand opening will happen a month before the child's 9th birthday. The elders suddenly panic, realizing her birthday is only a few months away and they haven't planned a massive party yet. Chinma dismisses the meeting and strides out of the room, leaving the elders to their frantic planning. The oldest elder chuckles warmly, finally realizing exactly why the boss was in such a fantastic mood all morning. The hot-headed elder turns around, totally confused by the old man's sudden giggling. The old man points at Chinma's back as he walks away, noting that the boss specifically put his hair up today just to show off a new accessory. They suddenly realize Chinma isn't just opening the gates for politics, he's doing it to flex on the entire world. The hot-headed elder laughs out loud, admitting his chest feels surprisingly light today, pulling his robe tight. The old man smirks, mocking the younger guy for being so proud of his single ice flower. The young elder instantly rages, demanding to know how the old man managed to score 2 of the young miss's handmade flowers. He yells that this is exactly why you can never trust the Poison King, calling him a deceitful old geezer. The old man innocently recalls how the young miss sweetly called him grandpa and handed him a second flower with her tiny hands. The younger elder completely loses it, screaming that the old man should have told her to make enough for everyone. Jealous and petty, the young guy threatens to physically fight the old man for the extra flower like a true demonic sect member. Suddenly, the King of Corpses walks in, completely baffled by the 2 elders shouting at each other like little kids. The 2 arguing elders instantly freeze, their jaws dropping as they notice the newcomer's outfit. The King of Corpses casually brushes his chest, innocently asking if there's a problem with the 3 ice flowers he's rocking. The entire room falls silent. Every single elder is proudly wearing at least 1 or 2 of the young Mrs. Flowers on their chest. The young elder seethes with pure envy, realizing the supposedly modest King of Corpses is totally flexing on all of them. Chinma casually returns to his seat, pouring a cup of tea to officially start the meeting. The elders whisper to each other, totally disappointed that the boss isn't covered in at least 5 flowers, joking that her affection must be limited. Chinma completely ignores their whispering, shifting the topic back to the official document sent by the Murim sect. The oldest elder confirms that the Murim sect is requesting their cooperation in investigating the utter annihilation of the northern castle. Chinma's eyes narrow as he repeats the name, his mind already spinning a web of political traps for the righteous faction. Meanwhile, outside the main hall, Yoon Ryung watches the construction crews, asking her nanny if the restoration is almost done. The nanny confirms she'll be able to move back into the main castle soon, but Yoon Ryung points at a massive new building in the back. The nanny explains that the new building is a permanent barracks for the sect's top experts, a massive rule change, since nobody was previously allowed within 100 meters of the leader's castle. The nanny explains that moving the experts into the main castle is entirely to ensure Yoon Ryung's absolute protection. Yoon Ryung feels a twinge of guilt, realizing the sect's top warriors are going through a massive, stressful relocation just because of her. Wanting to make amends, she happily runs up to the working experts, asking if they've eaten and offering them snacks from the village. But her smile totally drops when the massive warriors start baby-talking her, cooing about how adorable she is. Suddenly, someone clears their throat loudly. Yoon Ryung looks up and gasps, recognizing the scary young elder from the meeting. The elder instantly drops into a squat, offering to carry her back to the castle like a total softie. He nervously stutters, pulling out a beautiful new dress and claiming he just happened to find it lying around. Yoon Ryung blankly stares at him, pointing out that nobody just finds a perfectly tailored, high-end dress on the street. She decides to just roll with it, flashing a huge smile and accepting the gift while calling him grandpa. The elder aggressively grabs her hand to lead her back, totally paranoid that she might magically break her legs if she walks by herself. Yoon Ryung protests, playfully pointing out that if he carries her on his back, he won't be able to see her cute face. The elder is instantly defeated by the logic, blushing heavily as he agrees to just hold her hand instead. As they walk away, the other experts watch in awe, whispering about how insanely good the young miss is at manipulating the higher-ups. Later, Yoon Ryung practically skips into Chinma's office, holding out a large wrapped bundle. She unties it, revealing a massive pile of glowing ice flowers, offering them to help fund the castle's expensive restoration. She explains her logic. The sect must be totally broke after destroying the northern castle and building so many new barracks. Chinma just stares at her, completely flabbergasted by her adorable, completely flawed understanding of their finances. He gently explains that no matter how rare those ice flowers are, they wouldn't even cover a fraction of the construction costs. Desperate to help, Yoon Ryung pulls out her secret stash, the explosive red beads gifted by the Poison King. Chinma's eyes widen as he picks up one of the highly volatile grenades. Yoon Ryung smiles brightly, completely clueless, saying they look pretty but admitting she carries them for emergencies. She innocently adds that the grandpas would probably be super sad if she gave away their gifts, right? Defeated, she ties her pouch back up, concluding that she just needs to grind out more ice flowers instead. Chinma stops her, gently assuring her that her contribution is already more than enough. With the financial crisis solved, Yoon Ryung leans on his desk and asks the ultimate question: how much do ice flowers actually sell for? Chinma looks at her straight in the eyes and casually drops a bomb, 10 bars of gold. Yoon Ryung's eyes practically turn into dollar signs. She throws her hands up, incredibly hyped to start a massive ice flower business. With her new side hustle planned out, she happily announces she's going to visit the sect heir. Chinma's brow twitches. He points out that she literally just visited Waryeon yesterday. Yoon Ryung innocently explains that the nanny made really good side dishes, and she just wants to drop them off without disturbing his training. Chinma's eyes glow with a sharp, protective intensity as he watches her go. He pulls her into his lap, softly telling her he isn't worried because he knows she won't do anything reckless. Yoon Ryung giggles, completely melting under her terrifying dad's wholesome affection. The scene shifts to the elders completely losing their minds. They argue that Chinma broke protocol by letting her visit the training facility, and even worse, agreed to let her meet the Murim sect investigators. But Chinma just smirks, remembering the absolute trust shining in his daughter's eyes. In a flashback, Yoon Ryung gives him a massive, tight hug, sincerely thanking him. She thanks him for not hiding her away, for letting her meet the investigators, and for allowing her to see Waryeon. Chinma smiles softly, noting that he promised to let her do whatever she wanted, admitting he still can't get used to how bright her smile is. Back in the present flashback, Yoon Ryung happily waves goodbye as she heads out. Before she can leave, Chinma gently grabs her wrist to stop her. He taps his cheek, playfully reminding her that she forgot something important. Yoon Ryung remembers that she gave him a kiss on the cheek once to say thank you, and he clearly expects another one. She stands on her tiptoes and plants a sweet kiss on his cheek, leaving the fearsome sect leader completely satisfied. He pats her head, softly warning her not to push herself too hard with her magic. She flashes a massive grin, totally lying as she claims making the flowers is just fun for her. With that, she finally heads out, leaving Chinma alone in his office. The wholesome dad energy instantly vanishes, replaced by a cold, calculating glare as he calls out to the shadows. The shadow guard drops down, and Chinma questions why his daughter thinks she can sell sword flowers like literal merchandise. The guard admits the king of corpses probably misunderstood her intentions. Chinma smirks, noting that it's physically impossible to put a price on a sword flower that maintains its shape permanently. He stares at the glowing pile of ice flowers, realizing that no martial arts expert in history would ever waste their precious internal energy just to craft pretty accessories. A rare, genuine smile crosses Chinma's face as he realizes this must be what it truly feels like to be loved. He gently closes the chest full of glowing ice flowers. He gives the shadow guard a bizarre order. If anyone actually tries to sell a sword flower in the villages, set the price at a staggering 10 gold bars. Chinma leans back in his chair, suddenly annoyed, noting that Yoon Ryung seems to be visiting the training facility way too often. He rubs his chin, completely irritated by the thought of her hand-delivering meals to Ak Waryon every single day. In his mind, he pictures his precious daughter happily feeding the sect heir like a total simp. He clenches his fist in frustration, trying to convince himself that he's just worried about her getting hurt on the walkover. He quickly dismisses the guard, telling him to relay the absurd price tag to the villages, while he tries to suppress his massive overprotective dad energy.